wasn't on the invite list, not on the email chain, not even in the group chat where they planned the whole thing for 6 months. I found out my brother was launching his company, the company I helped him build, from a spreadsheet in our mom's kitchen from a LinkedIn post. Public. Tagged everyone except me. There was a photo of him in a navy suit, champagne in hand, standing in front of a logo I had sketched on a napkin 3 years ago. The caption said, "Built from nothing. Grateful for everyone who believed in us." I read it twice. Then I put my phone face down on the counter and stood there listening to the refrigerator hum. My name is Selene. I'm 31 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, in an apartment with good light and a window that looks out over a courtyard where someone always seems to be walking a dog. I work in brand strategy. I'm good at what I do. And for the better part of my adult life, I was also the person my brother called when nothing was working. When the pitch deck needed to be rewritten at 11 at night, when the investor intro fell through and he needed a new angle, when he had to fire someone and didn't know how to write the email. His name is Callum. He's 3 years younger than me, and for a long time I told myself that's just what sisters do. I need to go back further to explain why the LinkedIn post hit the way it did. Not because the post itself was the beginning, it wasn't, but because nothing that happened after it would make sense without understanding what came before. Our parents divorced when I was 9 and Callum was 6. My mother raised us mostly alone in Baton Rouge, working 2 jobs for years until she finally got stable footing as an office manager at a medical practice. She was tired in the way only certain kinds of mothers are tired, quietly, without complaint, in a way that made you feel guilty for needing anything at all. I stopped needing things early. Callum took longer. He was bright. Everyone said so. Teachers, neighbors, our grandfather who drove down from Shreveport every few Christmases and always slipped Callum an extra 20. Callum was charming the way certain people are charming effortlessly, with a smile that made people want to give him things. I was the responsible one, dependable, the kind of kid adults called mature for her age, which, I've since learned, is usually a polite way of saying we stopped worrying about her. I did stop needing things, but that didn't mean I stopped wanting them. I just got very quiet about it. When I was 22, fresh out of LSU with a communications degree and a part-time job at a small agency in New Orleans, Callum called me from Austin. He had an idea. He wanted to build a platform, something that connected small businesses with local freelance designers. He had the concept. He needed help with the positioning, the pitch, the brand language. He also needed someone to look at his numbers. I spent 3 weekends that summer in a motel off I-10 because flights were too expensive, sitting across from him at a diner table with my laptop open, helping him build the thing from the ground up. I didn't ask for anything in return. I didn't think I had to. Over the next 4 years, I was his unpaid consultant, his sounding board, his editor. I rewrote his investor deck 4 times. When his first co-founder left and he needed to restructure the equity split, I stayed on the phone with him for 3 hours walking through the auctions. When he got his first real check, a seed round from a VC firm based in Dallas, he sent me a bottle of wine and a card that said, "Couldn't have done it without you." I kept the card. I put it on my refrigerator. I told myself that was enough. The thing about being the dependable one is that people start to rely on your reliability without ever acknowledging it. You become part of the infrastructure. No one thanks the foundation of a house. It's just expected to hold. The year before the LinkedIn post, things had started to shift between us. I had started dating someone, a man named Tristan, who worked in renewable energy consulting and had a quiet steadiness I hadn't realized I'd been looking for. Tristan noticed things. He noticed when I came home from a phone call with Callum looking hollowed out. He noticed that I always answered when Callum called, even during dinner, even on weekends, even when I was sick. He didn't say anything for a long time. He just noticed. I also got promoted. I became a director at my firm, which meant real money for the first time, real authority, and a lot less time to be anyone's informal advisor. I started saying no to things. Not to Callum specifically, just generally. I started protecting my calendar. I started sleeping more. I started running again, something I'd given up in my mid-20s when I was always too busy helping someone else with something. Looking back, I think Callum noticed the shift before I did. He started calling less. When he did call, the conversations were shorter. I didn't read into it at the time. I thought he was just busy. The company had grown. He had a real team now, real investors, real momentum. I was proud of him. I still am, in the complicated way you can be proud of someone and angry at them at the same time. Then came October. The company launched its flagship product. There was an event in Austin, a rooftop venue, media there, investors, all of it. I found out from LinkedIn. A public post. Everyone tagged except me. I want to be honest about what the first hour felt like. It wasn't anger, not right away. It was something closer to vertigo, that disorienting moment when the floor you were sure was solid turns out to be just a very convincing rug. I scrolled through the comments. 37 people tagging him with congratulations. Someone from the Austin Business Journal had already shared it. I looked for my name in the post, in the comments, anywhere. I wasn't there. I texted my mother. "Did you know about Callum's launch event?" She replied, 20 minutes later. "He mentioned it, I think last month. I didn't realize it was today. Are you okay?" That was how I knew she hadn't said anything to me because she hadn't thought to. Not because someone told her not to. Because the possibility of me needing to know, needing to be there, hadn't occurred to her as something that required attention. I set my phone down. I poured a glass of water. I stood at my kitchen window and watched someone in the courtyard throw a ball for a golden retriever who kept missing it and circling back for another try. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just let the silence sit until it stopped being loud. Tristan came home around 7 to find me on the couch with the lights off, not watching the TV that was on. He sat next to me without saying anything for a minute. "The launch was today," I said. "I know," he said. "I saw the post." He didn't tell me. Tristan picked up my hand. He didn't fill the silence with reassurances. That was the thing about him, he didn't rush to fix things. He just stayed. "You did the original brand positioning," he said finally. "Didn't you? The name? The logo concept? The first pitch deck?" "Yeah." He nodded once. "I'm sorry. That was all. I didn't need more than that." But I sat with those two words for a long time after, turning them over. I had spent years being the person who helped other people build things. The person who made sure the lights came on and the presentation worked and the email landed right. The person who was grateful just to be useful. And I had spent so long in that role that I'd stopped noticing I wasn't being invited to any of the rooms I helped build. I called him the next day. He answered on the third ring. Upbeat, slightly distracted. I could hear the background noise of what sounded like a coffee shop. "Hey, the launch went amazing," he said before I could say anything. "You see the coverage?" "I saw your LinkedIn post," I said, "from my apartment, where I was not." A beat. "Oh, yeah. It was kind of last minute. 3 years of pitch decks is not last minute, Callum." He was quiet. "Then, it was a business thing. It wasn't really a family event. The caption said you were grateful for everyone who believed in you." He didn't answer that. We talked for 12 minutes. He said he'd been meaning to call. He said the timeline moved faster than expected. He said he'd make it up to me. None of it was cruel. It was something worse. It was breezy, like the conversation about my absence from the biggest moment of the company we built together was the kind of thing that could be resolved with a coffee and a future lunch. He was already moving on before we hung up. I didn't say anything more. I thanked him for his time. Actually said that, "Thanks for your time," like he was a client, and ended the call. That evening, I opened my laptop and looked at my calendar. Tristan had mentioned 3 weeks earlier that his firm was sending him to Kyoto for a conference, Tech and Sustainability, something mid-November. He'd asked if I wanted to come. I had said maybe. I hadn't thought about it since. I opened his contact and typed, "I want to come to Kyoto." He replied in 2 minutes, I was hoping you'd say that. I want to explain something about that decision. It wasn't revenge. I didn't book a flight to Japan to make a point or post photos to upset anyone. I booked a flight to Japan because for the first time in years, when I asked myself what I wanted, not what was useful, not what was responsible, just what I wanted, Kyoto was the answer. I told my friend Bex the next day over coffee. Bex has known me since college, which means she knew me when I was still pretending I didn't need anything. She's the kind of person who says exactly what she thinks and somehow never manages to sound unkind doing it. "You're going to Japan," she said, and the way she said it didn't sound like a question. "Tristan's conference. I'm tagging along." "Good." She wrapped both hands around her mug. "You've been someone's backup generator for 31 years. Go be a person." She reached into her bag before we left and pulled out a small wrapped box, a silk scarf deep green, the kind of thing I would never buy for myself, always talk myself out of at the last minute. "For Kyoto," she said. "Wear it somewhere that doesn't require you to be useful." I folded it carefully between my palms like it was something breakable. The 2 weeks before we left were a blur of client work and packing lists and Tristan printing conference agendas while I booked dinner reservations in a language I didn't speak. I cleaned out my inbox. I turned off push notifications on everything except one work email. I also, quietly, without ceremony, declined 2 of Callum's calls. He had started calling again, more frequently now, which I recognized as the pattern of someone who reaches out when they sense something has shifted. I didn't call back. We landed in Osaka on a Tuesday morning in November and took the train to Kyoto. The light was low and golden. The kind of light that makes everything look like something you half remember from a dream. The city was quieter than I expected. There was temple incense somewhere in the cold air. Tristan had meetings the first 2 days. I spent them on my own, which is how I learned that I was comfortable being alone in a way I'd forgotten. I walked through Fushimi Inari early enough that there were almost no other tourists, just the torii gates repeating into the mountain fog, and me in Bex's green scarf, stopping to take photos not because they would look good posted anywhere, but because I didn't want to forget that I had been there. The 3rd day, Tristan was free. We rented bicycles and took them out past Arashiyama, through the bamboo grove where the wind moved the stalks in a sound like rain. He didn't try to talk the whole time. Some people need to fill silence. Tristan treats it like something worth protecting. We stopped at a small restaurant for lunch, no English menu. We pointed at things and waited to see what arrived. When the food came, he raised his water glass. "To what exactly?" I asked. "To you stopping," he said. "Stopping carrying everyone else." I looked at him for a moment. "I haven't stopped. You're getting there." That evening, I posted a photo. Not of the bamboo grove that felt too private, just one image from the morning at Fushimi Inari, the torii gates, my hand on one of the red posts, the green scarf just visible at the edge of the frame. The caption was simple: "Some doors you walk through for yourself." I closed the app. I didn't check it again for 2 hours. When I did check, there were more comments than I expected. Friends from college, former colleagues, people I hadn't heard from in years. Then a message from my cousin Delia, who lives in Houston and has always been more plugged into family news than I am. "Your photo is gorgeous. Also, has Callum called you?" I hadn't talked to anyone in Austin. I didn't know what she meant. It turned out that the post had found its way, through the specific social alchemy of LinkedIn shares and mutual connections, to someone named Harlow Vance. Harlow was a principal at a venture firm that had been in early conversations with Callum's company about a Series A. She had been doing her own research standard due diligence and had been building a picture of the team behind the product. When she saw my post, she recognized my name. Because 3 years earlier, I had given a talk at a brand strategy conference in Denver that she'd attended. She remembered me, and when she looked at my profile, she saw that I had been working in brand strategy for nearly a decade, had a director title at a respected firm, had presented at multiple industry events. Then she looked at Callum's company's early deck, which she had on file from their initial pitch, and she noticed something. The original positioning document, the one that led with the core value proposition and the market language that had apparently convinced the first investors to take a meeting, was structured in a way she recognized. She couldn't explain it precisely. She just knew it didn't quite match Callum's other written materials. She reached out to me through LinkedIn. Not aggressive, just professional. A connection request with a brief note. I believe we may have overlapping connections. Would love to chat if you have 15 minutes. I accepted. We had a 30-minute call from a cafe in Kyoto while Tristan was at a panel discussion. She asked me, gently, whether I had been involved in the early development of my brother's company. I told her the truth, yes. The brand positioning, the first deck, the company name itself, I told her without bitterness. She didn't push for more than I offered. After the call, I sat in the cafe for a while with a second cup of coffee I didn't really want. The city moved past the window bicycles, school children in yellow hats, a woman in a beige coat walking slowly enough that she seemed to have nowhere urgent to be. Tristan called after his panel. How are you? I think something is about to happen that I didn't plan, I said. Good or bad? I don't know yet. But I didn't start it. He was quiet for a moment. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. I know. Do you actually know that? I laughed. Just a little. Getting there. What happened next, I only learned in pieces over the following 2 weeks, through my cousin Delia and one of Callum's early team members who had since left the company and felt no particular loyalty to him. Harlow Vance had gone back to her firm with questions, not accusation, questions. In the due diligence process for the Series A, she had flagged inconsistencies between the narrative Callum had presented about the company's origins and what the paper trail actually showed. The original positioning document had metadata. The deck had version history. My name wasn't in either because Callum had removed it at some point. But the document structure, the specific language choices, the sequence of ideas were consistent with my publicly available work in a way that raised flags. The Series A went quiet, not dead quiet. Harlow's firm said they needed more time. Callum called me from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was 5 minutes long. He was not angry. He was something worse, frightened, and performing calm very badly. He said there had been some confusion. He said he'd always credited my contribution internally. He said he was sure we could clear everything up. He ended by saying he missed me, which might have even been true, but it landed wrong like a thing you say because you need something, not because you mean it. I didn't call back, not that day. Tristan and I were on the Shinkansen to Hiroshima when I listened to the voicemail. I played it once, put in my earbuds, and watched the countryside move past the window at 200 miles per hour. Reese fields, power lines, the distant edge of mountains, everything streaking away. What did he say? Tristan asked. That he needs help. What are you going to do? I thought about it for a long time. Nothing, I said finally. For now, nothing. He nodded. He didn't tell me I was right or wrong. He just turned back to his book. We came home from Japan on a Thursday in late November. My apartment was cold and quiet and exactly as I'd left it. I made coffee. I went through my mail. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop and looked at everything I needed to catch up on and felt, for the first time in a long time, completely present in my own life. The next morning, I signed the papers on something I'd been considering for months, a small consulting practice of my own, not a leap a step. I kept 2 of my existing clients, started with a small retainer structure, worked out of my apartment and I could justify a real space. I called it Strata. I didn't explain the name to anyone for a while. It meant layers, geological ones, the way things get built up slowly, over time, under pressure. The way the most durable foundations form. Within 6 weeks, I had 4 clients. One of them came to me through Harlow Vance, who had been impressed by our conversation in Kyoto and introduced me to a founder she was advising. We never talked about Callum again. We didn't need to. My mother called on a Sunday in December. She'd heard, through the family network that operates with the efficiency of a small intelligence operation, that Callum's Series A had stalled. She asked me, carefully, if I knew anything about it. I don't know more than you do, I said, which was technically true. He seems really stressed, she said. I'm worried about him. I'm sure he'll figure it out, I said. He always does. She paused. I could hear her thinking. The particular silence of a mother who wants to say something about what she knows but isn't sure she should. He should have told you about the launch, she said finally. Yes. I should have said something to you sooner about it. I didn't realize. I thought you two had talked. We hadn't. Another pause. I'm sorry, Selene. It was the first apology I'd received from anyone in my family about any of it. I held it in my chest for a moment. Thank you, I said. That means something. Callum reached me a few weeks later through email. He'd given up calling numbers he thought were me and had gone back to basics. The email was 3 paragraphs long. He apologized for not inviting me to the launch. He said he'd been wrong. He said he was talking to the investors to sort out the questions that had come up, and he wasn't asking me to fix it. He just wanted me to know he was taking responsibility. He ended by saying he'd understand if I needed more time. I read it twice. I didn't reply that night. I went for a run. The city was wet with November rain, even though it was technically December, and the streets had that particular smell of pavement and pine needles and something metallic that I've only ever noticed in Portland. I ran until my legs felt real. Then I walked home slowly, hands in my pockets. I thought about the 3 years I'd spent on phone calls and late nights and rewritten pitch decks. I thought about the bottle of wine and the card that said, "Couldn't have done it without you," that I'd put on my refrigerator and eventually taken down when I moved apartments and quietly thrown away. I thought about sitting alone in my kitchen with the lights off, hearing a LinkedIn notification from the launch of a company I helped name. Then I thought about Kyoto, the torii gates in the fog, Tristan raising a water glass, Bex's green scarf, the conversation in a cafe with a woman I'd never met who had recognized the structure of my thinking in a document with my name removed. I was not angry. That was the surprising thing. I had expected to find anger when I finally sat with everything. And instead, I found something quieter, a kind of clarity, the specific peace that comes not from being forgiven, but from no longer needing to be. I wrote back to Callum 3 days later. It was a short email. I told him I appreciated the apology. I told him I wasn't in a place to rebuild quickly, not because I was punishing him, but because I was in the middle of building something for myself, and that had to come first for a while. I told him I hoped the Series A resolved. I said I'd reach out when I was ready. I didn't sign it Love, Selene. I signed it just my name. Strata grew faster than I expected. By March, I had a part-time contractor. By May, I had moved into a real office, small, 1 room, good light, a plant I actually remembered to water. I had a client roster that was entirely women, which had not been a deliberate decision but had become the thing I was most proud of. A former CFO launching her own advisory practice, a first-generation founder building a sustainable textile brand, a woman who had spent 15 years in corporate HR and was turning her accumulated knowledge into a consultancy that trained managers to actually retain people. I sat across from all of them and I listened more than I talked, and I thought more than once, this was the training I didn't know I was getting. Tristan proposed in June. Not in Japan, we'd already had our Japan moment. He proposed in our kitchen on a Sunday morning, over the kind of ordinary breakfast that has no context except that it's the life you've been quietly building together. No ring box presentation. He just looked at me across the table and said he wanted to keep doing this, and did I want to keep doing this? And I said yes, so fast that I didn't even finish my coffee first. I told Bex at brunch that same afternoon. She screamed loud enough that the table next to us looked over, then immediately turned back to their own conversation, which is the correct Portland response to someone screaming at brunch. I knew it, she said. I've known it since Kyoto. We were in Kyoto for 4 days. Some things you just know. I posted 1 photo that evening. Just Tristan's hand and mine. No ring visible over a coffee cup. The caption was, "Said yes to the right things." I wasn't thinking about anyone when I posted it. I was just happy, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to shrink that. The comments came in fast. Friends, colleagues, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Near the bottom, after I'd already stopped reading, There was one from Callum. Just, congratulations. I mean it. I didn't reply. But I read it more than once, and I believed him, and I let that be enough. There's a version of the story where the point is the Series A falling through, or Callum learning his lesson, or some final reckoning that plays out in a room I'm present for. But that's not actually what happened. What happened was quieter than that and more permanent. I stopped waiting to be recognized by people who had stopped seeing me. I stopped building other people's rooms and standing outside them. I started choosing what I was walking toward instead of managing what I was walking away from. And somewhere in the space that opened up when I stopped making myself small enough to fit, I found the thing I'd been told my whole life I was already good at, except this time. Finally, it belonged to me. My name is Celeste. I am 31 years old. I live in Portland, in an apartment with good light and a window over a courtyard. I own a company. I am getting married. I am not on anyone's backup list anymore. And I want to say directly to anyone who has ever been the dependable one, the one who stays up to finish the email, who answers the call during dinner, who helps carry something heavy for someone who never says thank you, your worth is not in your availability. You are not infrastructure. And the moment you stop making yourself small to hold someone else's thing together, something extraordinary happens. The space doesn't fill with loss, it fills with you. If this found you on a hard day, leave a comment. Let someone else know they're not the only one. And if you're ready to stay, I'll be here. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened, not in a cosmic sense. I don't think the universe was keeping score or sending me a message. I just think that the choices we make have weight, and eventually that weight lands somewhere. Callum made choices for years. So did I. And both sets of choices led us exactly where we ended up. He chose to take credit quietly, to let documents circulate without my name on them, to build a narrative about himself that was convenient and left no room for inconvenient truths, like a sister who stayed up rewriting his pitch at midnight, who gave him the language that made investors lean forward in their chairs. That choice felt safe to him, I think. Tidy. I was across the country, dependable and silent, unlikely to disrupt anything. And I had made my own choice for years to stay silent, to keep showing up, to tell myself that being useful was the same as being valued, and that one day the acknowledgement would come if I was just patient enough, good enough, quiet enough. That choice felt safe to me too. Familiar, at least. What I've learned is that safety built on someone else's convenience is not actually safety. It's just postponed pain. When I stopped being available, when I flew to Kyoto and spent 4 days being a person instead of a resource, I wasn't trying to teach anyone a lesson. I was just finally listening to something I'd been ignoring for a long time. That I was tired, and that tired people are allowed to rest, and that rest is not betrayal. But something happened in that space. When I stopped holding the shape of the story Callum had built, the story started to show its seams. Harlow Vance noticed them. The investors noticed them. Not because I did anything, but because the truth has a texture, and when you stop smoothing it over, other people can feel it. That's the thing about integrity. You can remove someone's name from a document, but you cannot remove the structure of how they think. You cannot scrub out the specific way a person solves a problem. The work I had done was still in there, visible to anyone paying close enough attention. And someone was. Callum wasn't a villain. He was someone who took the easier path, again and again until the easier path ran out. I understand that. I spent years taking the easier path, too easier to help than to ask for recognition, easier to show up than to say what I actually needed. Neither of us had been honest, not really. The difference is that his dishonesty had consequences that were public, and mine had consequences that were private. I carried mine alone for a long time. What I'm most grateful for is not the outcome, not strata, not the proposal, not any of it, though I'm grateful for all of it. What I'm most grateful for is the moment I sat in that cold apartment in November with my phone, face down on the counter, and felt something shift. That was the moment I stopped waiting. Not dramatically. Not with a declaration. I just quietly decided that I was going to take up the space I'd been folding myself out of for years. I think that's what nobody tells you about building a life with integrity. It's not one big moment of courage. It's a series of small decisions to stop shrinking, to stop performing smallness to make someone else comfortable, to let the truth of what you've done and who you are exist, plainly, without apology. Tristan asked me once, in Kyoto, if I actually knew that I didn't have to do anything I didn't want to do. I'm still learning the answer to that, but I'm closer than I was.